What's up, basketball coaches, players, and fans? Welcome to the Pass First podcast, where we share our knowledge of the game. My name is Alex Engel, and I'm here with my partner, Augie Johnston. We hope you guys are having a great holiday season as we're right now in the middle of the holidays, so we're doing a holiday episode. Okay, this is Hoops during the holidays. We're going to be talking about everything that basketball coaches and players go through during this kind of December, January time of the year where we're being affected by a lot of different things as far as the holidays and school being usually closed during that time. So we're going to discuss all those things. And thank you guys so much for following us. If you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, or on iTunes, please make sure to like and subscribe as we do come out with a new episode once every week. So without further ado, let's get right into today's episode. All right, guys, welcome in. Thank you again so much for joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about basketball during the holiday season. And so kind of to start it off, we want to discuss what does your basketball schedule look like, during this holiday season. Some of you may be familiar with it and some of you may not. So I'll ask you first, what does your schedule look like as you're kind of approaching that early December season, and just give us a little description of that for you.
Yeah, so here at the high school level, we normally start in early November. So you have the Thanksgiving holiday coming up, and of course that's preseason, that's practice time. So we're getting in our practices, working real hard during those times. In college, starts a little bit earlier, I think like October 15th. But the season runs, all the way until, late February, early March. So you're dealing with, a bunch of holidays. You could even throw Valentine's Day in there, even though that's not really the one we're thinking of here. But you got Thanksgiving, you got Christmas, you got New Year's. So those are the three big ones that you're dealing with as a basketball player coach every single year.
Yeah, and I think that the winter sports fall over that time period that it seems to just hit the most holidays all at once, the most like school breaks and this, like your fall sports, you might go into Thanksgiving maybe, but that's it. Usually you got Christmas, spring break, New Year's all off. And then your spring sports, you probably are hitting spring break. I mean, you are hitting spring break, but you're normally not affected by anything else. So winter just goes over this time where it's like school's going, it stops, school's going, it stops. And it can kind of throw people off. Especially because all those holidays during that time are like a lot of the major ones, where people are thinking, I'm going to be home with my family. Oh, I got winter break. I'm off for 2 weeks. I just get to hang out at home. And it's like, well, if you're an athlete, you don't get that luxury, right? It's a little bit different. So, when we're talking about those holiday times, what are you trying to accomplish, like for your team? What are the goals? Because we know that, as you go through that schedule, you have your preseason, then you have your league season. So what is, I guess, the goal of preseason, especially, I would say, mainly like in that December timeframe?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on what kind of team you have. If you have a bunch of new guys, then you're spending a lot of time putting stuff in and going through the motions of learning your offense, learning your defense, and those kind of principles. So really, that's how I'm spending the early time of preseason, as well as getting some games. So your games are going to be starting in November, right around Thanksgiving time. So I'm trying to win some games and just kind of form an identity as a team. If we come into the season and we're like, oh, we're just gonna go inside all day to our big, and then those first few preseason games come and it's just not working, it's not looking right. Well, luckily it's early enough to make some adjustments, maybe change a little bit of what you're doing. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on during these holiday times, is get everything in, get some games under our belts, try to get some wins. If not, maybe adjust and go from there.
Yeah, and another thing, I think those are all good points. And one other thing that I focus on during that preseason time period specifically is trying to figure out my lineup. I know in the preseason or I guess the preseason, right, the practice part of the season, you have an idea who your better players are, maybe who your best players are, but that doesn't always mean who your exact starting five are going to be. And sometimes you have someone that you think is going to be this major player for you and they don't pan out, right? And so someone comes off the bench and ends up taking their spot, or vice versa. So I think that, that it's a good time to figure out your lineup, and it's a good time to like test different lineups. Like you said, you want to win those games, and I don't think you should like sacrifice winning the games for just, throwing anybody in there. But I personally am more willing to maybe make some substitutions during the preseason and put some players in that I normally would not throw in as often during league, because I know that, okay, this is a time where I can kind of let them figure it out and let me figure out what works best. Because I think the overall goal is of the preseason is to get things fine tuned for league. I always tell my kids, like, look, I don't want to be the best team in December, or November. I want to be the best team in February and January. Ideally February, right as we're going into the playoffs, that's where I want to peak. So I think it's another good thing during this time of the year, is to try to figure that stuff out. So
Yeah, and
okay.
I've also, just other coaches on campus like that coach other sports always come up to me and be like, "Ha ha, I would never coach a winter sport because I don't want to give up my holidays, and because we are, during the holidays doing practices." So that's another thing that's kind of like a perk, though, in my view, is you can have 2-a-days, during these holiday time. There's no school. Kids are have all the time in the world, and they're actually looking forward to practice. And I can remember back when I was a player in high school and stuff, my favorite practices were always during the holidays, around Thanksgiving, Christmas time. Go to your first little workout in the morning, and then afterwards a bunch of players get together and go to McDonald's together, something like that. And I miss those times. So those are good times. But I think also, the 2-a-days is another thing that I do during the holiday times.
Okay. And I guess that kind of ties right into our next question here about the practice schedule and game schedule during the holidays. So what does that look like? You said 2-a-days. Is that something that you're doing like almost the entire holiday break, or just kind of here and there? And then again, what does your game schedule look like?
Yeah, so the 2-a-days is kind of a hit or miss thing. Like we'll put in a 1 or 2 days maybe where we have a couple practices, and it's all really just because of the fact that it's preseason and we're putting so much stuff in and we're learning so much. And even if I have a team that's been there before, we still need to go over how do we want to guard a player one on one? How do all the smallest little tiny details that players already know, but you want to build that foundation, I think, in the preseason no matter what. So yeah, we're practicing a lot. And I think I can remember vividly, actually, even last season, one of the freshmen players coming up to me, and as their parents actually was like, "Oh, what's going to be the holiday practice schedule like for the freshman team?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, there'll be some practices, maybe, no games." And we're talking about Christmas right now. And I was like, "But, you know, go on vacation now. Go on vacation next year when you're on JV. But when you're on varsity, this plan on those 2 years, not really going out of town for Christmas or Thanksgiving because, we'll be doing stuff." So, yeah.
And what about like schedule during that time? We talked about league. I think most people understand your league. Usually you're playing everybody twice. But what's a preseason schedule look like during that winter time or November time?
Yeah, it's normally tournament time. So we're hitting tournaments and stuff. And um, I mean, even last year, I wouldn't do this again. It was almost a mistake, but it worked out okay for us. But we actually had a tournament that went all the way up until I want to say December 23rd. It went all the way up until December 23rd was the last day. We actually won that tournament, and we came home, and everyone got home the 23rd at night. So they spent the 24th and 25th with their families. That was great. But we had a tournament on the 26th. So they literally only got the 24th, 25th off. And then we have our home Christmas tournament, the 26th. So we were right back after it, right after that. So a lot of games. And we talked a little bit before this, right? I think both of our league schedules actually started right in December.
hmm
So that was kind of a new thing too.
Yeah, and I know for us last year, we had the same thing where it's a lot of single games just against usually not obviously non-league opponents, maybe a team out of the area for high school at least. And then same thing with the tournaments, and we actually had a similar, not necessarily a problem, but scheduling uh, right around Christmas time, where
Hmm.
our tournament, but ours was away. So we didn't play games right before Christmas, but we had a tournament in the Bakersfield area at Arvin, which is about 2.5 hours, it's about 2.5 hours away. And it was on the 26th. So we practiced Christmas Eve morning, right? And then gave them off the rest of the day, gave them off Christmas Day, and then left the day after on the 26th to get to the tournament, so they didn't even really have 2 days. They had like a day and a half. But I explained to him, I said, look, we were going to this tournament. I'm not going to go into this tournament and not practice for like 2, 3, 4 days in a row. Like then it's going to be a waste of our time to go all the way out there. So, we did all right. And it's actually a really good tournament and we did pretty solid. So I'm glad we did put some time into it before. But I know, I think at first, especially even for high schoolers, they're like, well, what do you mean? Like, we're only going to get a couple days off? Like, I thought we were going to have like a week. And it's like, no, it's not how basketball works during that time of the year. You know, you're going to make that sacrifice. So it's just something you kind of have to get used to. And if you play at different levels, like in college, you know, you may have games or practices all around that time. You know, sometimes your days off may even be less. You know, you playing NBA, you play on Christmas a lot of the time, you know,
Hmm.
so the higher level you go, the less time off I think you're going to get for the holidays. But even for the high school level, like if you're a serious program, you're putting in work, you know, you're not getting a ton of days off. It's just kind of, it's one of those things you just have to accept if that's what you want to do, you know?
Yeah, and I think you only get what, 2, 3, maybe 4 if you're lucky years of varsity high school basketball. So if you're not willing to give up 2 Christmases in your whole life, then I mean you don't take it serious enough. And I think it's a good thing, right? You're going to remember those. Like I said, I still remember my Christmas workouts. I still remember spending Thanksgiving in Arizona when I was in college on a road trip game, and we went to some host family's house, right before the game, and ate Thanksgiving dinner and all that kind of stuff. So, and I remember that, and I enjoyed it. It sucks not to be with your family, but like I said, it's like you only get a few years to play this game, so appreciate those kind of things.
Yeah, and especially around Christmas time, it's really rare that even in college, but high school especially, like you're still going to get the actual day of Christmas with your family. It's, you know, it's not like I don't actually CIF, you're not allowed to practice or have games on Christmas. So it's guaranteed in high school you're going to be with your family that day. You know, yeah, it might be the days before, days after you don't get as much time, but like you said, you know, you only get to play basketball for so long. You eventually it's not like after Christmas is done then you just practice, never have a day off. You know, eventually, yeah, you'll get some days off later. It just doesn't align with I think what most people think of, which is like, oh, that whole week of Christmas you're just hanging out doing nothing, you know. You can't, even if we had the time to do that, it's probably not good to do that right middle of the season, just to take a week off and not do anything. It's not going to be good for your game or for your conditioning as well. So okay, so kind of speaking on that, what are some of the challenges that you've had, or you know, maybe not had, but had to kind of buffer against and protect against from just in general, or specifically with players during that holiday time of the year?
Yeah, I think just from a coaching perspective, one of the biggest challenges I think is just getting your schedule mapped out ahead of time so that parents know. They'll if it's not like they're trying to make Christmas plans and whatever, like the year before.
Mm.
So that's one huge challenge is knowing what you're going to be doing during the holiday breaks. And I mean, if it wasn't for COVID right now, I mean, I dealt with this even with this Thanksgiving break coming up because we have one player whose family he lives here with with his aunt and uncle, and he's going to go home and see his parents. And so he like needed to know the schedule like a month ago so he could book his flight and stuff. And I was just like, I don't know. But anyways, I think scheduling is definitely a challenge. And then players missing players. Your best players like, oh, I have this thing. Every Thanksgiving we go here. We're going. It's non-negotiable with my family, so I have to go. And now you're stuck in this weird place where your best player is not coming to practice. You have a game the day he's going to come back to that game. Now you're going to have to like sit them because whatever your policy is. But I think that's definitely challenges players heading out of town.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I would say that's probably, I mean, the scheduling too, but I would definitely agree that just making sure that players stay in town, and what I've done so far, and so far it's worked, but again, it's only been a year and a half, so I guess I can't speak too soon, is I just tell, my parents straight up and the kids, I usually have, we have our meeting and I try and do it way out ahead of time, like 6 months ahead, and just be like, hey, here's the deal. We are, even if I don't have an exact game scheduled yet for Christmas time or the holiday time, we are going to play and we're going to practice during that time. So if you want to play basketball, you don't get to leave during that time. Like you just put it in the books now that like if you want to play for me, you're going to be around here at this time. Otherwise, like don't play basketball. And it is pretty cut and dry. And I guess someone could say, well, you know what, then I'm going to quit and I'm not going to play. But for me personally, it's worked out because most of the time people are like, all right, I get it. We've got to be dedicated to this. And if half the team just decides all of a sudden, oh, we're going to go, visit grandma in New York for a week, and then we have to have a game during that time, we can't even play the game, and that's not really fair either. So to me, basketball is any sport. Once you commit to that sport, you need to honor that commitment, because that's why you're playing the sport at that level, especially the varsity level. Even though last year my JV and freshman, and I think we did actually give them some time off. during that time more than the varsity. But even there, like they also understood like, hey, we may not be able to leave town either, you know? So it is a push and pull. And I think at the college level, it's a little maybe easier to work because at the college level, you're like, look, I'm recruiting you and you either do it or you go home. Not my problem. High school, you got a little, work with people a little bit more. But generally speaking, I found if you set those rules way ahead of time and you don't surprise people with things, then at least they know going into it. And then they can't say, oh, well, you didn't tell me. It's like, you knew it. You decided to join the program. So now you've got to honor that commitment. I
Hmm.
think that's, for me personally, that's worked out pretty well so far.
Yeah,
So.
that's a good way to do it. I think another challenge too in college could be, you have to deal with that New Year's Eve, right? So in college, kids are going out partying, drinking, staying up late. So I remember my coach in college having like a 6 a.m. practice on January 1st that we had to go to, and that just kept everyone in. So that could be a challenge too.
Yeah, definitely. I've even had once or twice where players have over New Year or not, I don't know if it was New Year's, but over the holidays in college, they were like, I want to go home. And we're like, that's not how it works. And we had conflict over that, which so it does even happen. I don't think as often, but it does sometimes happen at the college level. But again, eventually it's like, look, dude, this is a commitment. You can't just show when you feel like it, otherwise there's no point in playing. Um, so, okay, what are some of the advantages of playing and practicing during that time of the year?
Well, one I think we already talked about, and that's just you have more time. There's no school, so you can practice more. You can do more of that. And also an advantage I would say is just kind of like the overall vibe, right? The Christmas vibe. You're with your players during that time. There's things you can go to, that can be, memory makers where you can go and do a Christmas event or something with your players. You can go and do a Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving thing with your players. So I would say that's definitely an advantage during the holidays.
Yeah, I think too. You kind of can give them just like a little taste of like a pro basketball vibe of like, hey, we just get to go practice, no school, and go travel and go to tournaments, and like that's it. Right now your life is just basketball. And I know, obviously, I'm not comparing that at all to like the NBA, but it's that same idea of like, hey, we're gonna go on a road trip for 3-4 days. We're just gonna play a bunch of games, no school, don't worry about it. Like all you got to focus on is basketball. I think that's kind of cool too because it's very relaxed. If you're going during the middle of the school year, not that kids don't want to be there. Obviously, they still want to play. But when you've got school in the back of your mind too, it's like it's just an added layer, that you don't have, I think, during the holiday breaks.
Yeah, that reminds me of like coming home from a road trip or something that's kind of late. It's totally different if you have school the next day, right? I love all the kids have their binders out or they're sleeping or they're all just all pissed off. But if it's not, then everyone's like, let's go to whatever Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
So no school,
Yeah.
baby. Yeah. So
And same with coaches. Like if you're a teacher, I mean, even if you're not a teacher, but especially for us as teachers, it's like, all right, we just got home from some road trip at 11:30, and now I got to get up at 6 a.m. the next day to, teach a lesson. And not that you don't love what you're doing, but it's a quick turnaround. It can be tiring some
dude,
days.
yeah. Oh, definitely.
Um, so yeah, that's definitely another part to it. Okay, what about on the flip side? And I know we kind of covered this a little bit, but like disadvantages, and I guess this maybe ties into challenges, but what are some of the disadvantages of that winter time area?
Yeah, just all the stuff I would say that we talked about, kids missing and that kind of stuff. And also, you know, for us, both of us I have a young family. You don't have any kids yet, but I know there will become a day, right, when we, have big families or at least, some kids that we got to, go and do Christmas stuff with. And I don't want to miss, during that time. I don't want to miss what they got going on if they have a Christmas recital or something like that. So I would say that's probably the biggest disadvantage and the one that, the other coach on campus would always say to me, I would never coach a winter sport. And it's because he's talking about that, I think.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I'm going to tie this kind of back into the challenges, but just popped into my head, and I'm only specifically talking about at the junior college level with this. So if we have any junior college players or coaches happen to be listening to this, you probably know what I'm talking about. Every year during winter break on like most teams, that's when you see people quit. That was like the cutoff. Like, and I don't think at the university level it's as common at the 4-year level because usually got scholarships and stuff, and guys are they are where they want to be normally, so they're gonna stick it out. But junior college, you get some guy that's not playing enough and he thinks he should be playing more, and he's not on scholarship, or he's homesick or whatever, and all of a sudden, boom, you take off. And I've seen it not just teams I've coached where 1, 2, even 3 guys leave, but some teams, like literally almost half their team I've seen gone by, midway through that season. Yeah, it's wild. We played games in like right after Christmas. There was a tournament at Allen Hancock, and we played teams that were like 7 guys on the team by that time of the year. 8 guys on the team, and obviously they started with like 14 or something. So it's just junior college is kind of interesting because there's nothing tying you there, and so people can just dip, at the drop of a hat.
You still lose that year of eligibility, though, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not a good move because if any time in college, I mean, it all comes back to what your coach thinks of you. So if you are not getting playing time, but you go hard and stuff, and you want to go play somewhere else, like at least you'll be able to get a good review. Your coach isn't going to normally give you a bad review unless you're messing up, like grade wise, attitude, all that kind of stuff. But if you're just doing your job and not getting playing time, like you still will have an opportunity somewhere else if you want to leave after season.
Yeah, and you're right about it. You lose your year of eligibility, and I think a lot of people just give up too easily. They get in, maybe because a lot of them were pretty good players, even at the junior college level. They might have been all league or all conference or whatever, and then they come over to a junior college, and they've got other guys that are better than them, and instead of just waiting it out, they end up just saying, this isn't worth it, I'm going to quit. And it's a mental thing for a lot of them, as far as that mental toughness. Do you have that? And I think sometimes players, they don't realize that it's not just about playing basketball. There's more to it than that. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And I know we've kind of dived into this a little bit, but what are some of the main differences between high school and college during that holiday season?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like the expectations, right? And if you're in college, your coach's expectations are higher of you, being at practice, being at the games, and that kind of stuff. I think in high school, probably a lot of times there is a kid that would even miss a game, not just a practice, for some kind of holiday thing. In college, I wouldn't see that as often. But then you have on the flip side the totally different dynamic of where every single player in college is not with their family. So as a college coach, you have like some sort of responsibility that if you're going to make them stick around for whatever many days, or maybe even not even go home for Thanksgiving, right? Well, then you have a responsibility to kind of like put something together or make some sort of holiday spirit thing, I think, for your players. When in high school, you don't really have to worry about that because they're with their families every night.
Yeah, and I know that I definitely had some of my coaches in college that would put something together for us, or maybe even a teammate would put something together. At Cuesta, we had a lot of international kids, so usually, like I know when I was a player, a couple of the guys from like Belgium or Spain, they're obviously not going to go home, so we invite them over. Or when I'm coaching, we had kids that would invite half the team over to their house. So I think definitely that becomes kind of your family during that time of the year, and that's what's so cool to me about college athletics. And not to say that high school doesn't have that same family atmosphere to an extent. If maybe if you're in the right program, they can build that. But college, it's really like you're giving up a lot to go there, and it's it's a real dedication and part of your life. And I think the experiences you share during those 4 years, in a lot of ways, can be a stronger bond than in high school. And
Mm-hmm.
and again, I don't want to like diminish the high school level by any means, but I did feel, at least for myself, like when I went to college, it was like, okay, we're all here on that same mission, and we're all kind of thinking the same thing. So it tied us together more because we obviously go through the same kind of hardships, or I don't know, hardships, but it's it is a little more difficult to be away from your family. So um, yeah, and I think just the overall thing with that high school college dynamic is like you said, that there's just an expectation that you're going to be there, you're here for a reason. It's not pro, but the expectation is similar to a pro. Yeah, you're not getting paid. I mean, you're getting your school paid for, I guess, but you're not getting paid money like a pro, but you're expected to show up every day as if you were. So you can't just decide all of a sudden I'm not going to do it and expect to keep being on part of the team. They'll get rid of you real quick if you're not showing up. So that's definitely another dynamic there. So
Yeah, and I think
um,
part of the reason of that is because even if you're not on scholarship, even if there's nothing like that on the line, like there's 12 spots on the roster and you're taking up one of those spots, and we know everyone wants to play college basketball, right? So, I mean, they gave you that spot, so you have to honor it, and otherwise someone else wants it.
yeah, they'll give it away real quick, and like you said, there's a lot of people that want them. So, okay. Well, anything else that you can think of or wanted to tie in before we get out of here?
No, just kind of like my last thought, and something I didn't mention is that I guess because I've been, involved with basketball my whole life, and it's always during the winter. It's like anytime, the time changes, right? It starts to get darker a little earlier. Like you feel like it's basketball season. And that's kind of one of the weird things right now with COVID and everything is that I get that vibe when it starts to get dark early and it's cold out and I got my jacket. I'm walking around like it's basketball season, baby, but it's just not right now. But yeah, I mean, it's synonymous to me. Christmas, basketball.
And actually, that reminded me of something I was thinking of earlier. Is that because of COVID right now, this is like the first time in a lot of our lives that we've had this time off. This is the first time I'm going to have a week off of Thanksgiving, and probably get 2-3 weeks off during winter break because we're not doing anything. We're not even allowed to do stuff right now. So for those of you, if you are coaching and right now you're like, oh, it's a bummer. Trust me, like Augie and I would love to be, having our season as well. But it's just not reality right now. So the silver lining to that is you get to spend a lot more time with your family this year. And this might be the only time, if you're going to continue coaching or playing, this might be the only time in your life that'll be, that case if you keep coaching for 30 years. So for me, it's been, I don't know, 15, 16 years. I know I was talking to our friend Casey, and he was talking about Coach Blair over at the head coach at Cuesta, who's been coaching, for 30 something years and playing for another 25. And he's like, yeah, this is the first time I've had the holidays off in like 50 something years, and I just thinking about that. I was like, whoa, it's kind of wild. You don't really think about those things because you're so used to it. But I would say just take advantage of this time right now, because it's probably not going to, hopefully it's not going to happen again. So
True.
All right. Well, on that note, let's wrap this thing up. So thank you again, everybody, for watching. We hope you guys are seriously having a great and happy holidays with your families. Enjoy the time that you get to spend together, because it is so important. As much as we love basketball, we know that our families are obviously the most important things in our lives. So, if you've been liking these episodes, please make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow us on YouTube, or you can subscribe on both Spotify or iTunes. So we come out with a new episode once a week. We hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace.